illustrates how much is at stake as President Trump attempts to put Judge Kavanaugh on the bench and fulfill his promise of striking down Roe v. Wade. We didn't have a term for it then, but when I was in college, my very close friend went out on a date and is what we would now call date raped. She got pregnant, and this was before Roe. She couldn't find a place to get a safe, legal abortion in our country. And she had no money. She was not wealthy. So she didn't have the means to find one anywhere else. Well, she ended up having a back alley procedure, and it left her at a very young age, unable ever to give birth. That impacted me a lot. And that is why when Roe v. Wade did affirm, finally, that women in the United States have the constitutional right to make their own reproductive health care decisions, I committed to doing everything I could to ensure that that right was protected. It is exactly why I've fought extreme Republicans tooth and nail to stop them from defunding Planned Parenthood and from chipping away at women's access to reproductive care at the state level. It's why I've stood with women across the country against each and every attempt by President Trump to restrict women's access to care. And it is why I feel today, with President Trump's nomination of Judge Kavanaugh, that we have never been more at risk of going backwards. Look, President Trump has broken promise after promise, but he has never, ever once wavered in listening to extreme ideological special interests when it comes to women's access to health care. He promised them he would nominate Supreme Court justices who would strike down Roe and undermine women's health care access, and he found exactly what he was looking for in Judge Kavanaugh. Judge Kavanaugh has supported indefinitely blocking a young woman from having an abortion. He determined that a woman's boss shouldn't even have to submit paperwork to help her get contraceptive coverage outside of work if that boss didn't think women should use birth control. He is the ideological dream pick for President Trump, Vice President Pence, and the conservative special interests whose lists they are choosing from. And he would be devastating for women's health and rights in the United States. Because make no mistake, if Judge Kavanaugh is seated on the Supreme Court bench, 5 men will be empowered to overturn Roe v. Wade and take us back to the days when a woman didn't have the option of accessing safe, legal abortion. 5 men will decide that young women will not get to plan their families and achieve their dreams. 5 men will decide access to safe abortion in the United States is a privilege for the wealthy rather than what it should be and has been for decades, the constitutionally protected right of every woman, no matter how much money she has or where she lives. 5 men will decide that women cannot be trusted to make their own most personal health care decisions, and therefore that in a very real sense, women are not treated equally in the United States of America. The vast majority of Americans do not want this to happen. They do not want to see women's constitutional rights rolled back. They do not want our daughters and our granddaughters to lose constitutional protections women have now had for more than 4 decades. So I urge everyone who is listening today, talk to your friends about how much this matters. Share your stories. Rally, call your senators, write to them. There is simply too much at stake to sit on the sidelines. And we can defeat this nomination, but only if we do it the way we defeated Trumpcare. Because people across the country stood up and said, not on my watch. So please speak out wherever you can and know that Democrats are here fighting right alongside you. This is an important time in our nation's history, and we all need to take action. With that, I'm very delighted to introduce Senator Smith to you. She's been a great champion, and I'm really proud she's here, along with Senator Duckworth and others who will be joining us. And you will hear from 2 people with their personal stories. But I'll introduce Senator Smith first.
Thank you so much, Senator Murray. I had hoped that this president would appoint a consensus justice, a person ready to protect the rights of all Americans. The Supreme Court should be above partisan politics. But make no mistake, Justice Kavanaugh will not be that justice. President Trump has been clear about his test for judicial nominations. At campaign rallies over and over again, he promised to nominate anti-choice judges who would, as he said, quote, automatically, unquote, overturn Roe v. Wade. So it is clear. President Trump, the Heritage Foundation, and the Federalist Society believe that they can count on Judge Kavanaugh to cast that decisive fifth vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. Says Miley. No, it's good. It's good. She agrees. I stand before you as the only senator who has ever worked at Planned Parenthood. I know when women do not have the freedom to make their own choices about their reproductive health care, they've lost the freedom to direct their lives. They've lost the freedom to direct their personal lives, to help the economic security of their families, and to help their own economic security. And I trust women to make these decisions. And I'm here to tell you, American women do not need the government looking over their shoulder in the examination room, telling them what they can and cannot do with their own selves. But this is not only women's freedom that is at stake here. The Supreme Court makes decisions that affect every aspect of life and every part of America. Who you can marry, your rights to vote, your rights at work, whether we can protect the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the land that we share. So this is a pivotal moment in our democracy. And while it is true that it is an uphill climb, we need to remember our strength. I am thinking today of my grandmother, who was 17 when women marched on the inaugural of Woodrow Wilson demanding the right to vote. I'm thinking about my mother, who was in her 20s, when the right of married women to buy birth control became legal, thanks to the Supreme Court. And I am thinking of my own 16-year-old self, who was 16 when Roe v. Wade became the law of the land. If you are listening to this, I want you to think of the freedoms that you have and the work that we need to do together to protect those freedoms. Only a year ago, the Senate voted down Trump's plan to repeal the Affordable Care Act. We won by a single vote. And that's because people all over this country spoke out. America, your voices are strong, but only if you use them. So if you want a Supreme Court justice who will protect all of our rights and not take our country backward, it is important. We need to organize, speak out, speak up. Do this with your senator, with your neighbors, do it in every part of your life, and we can take this on. Thank you very much. Now, Elizabeth? Or Tammy, I'm not sure.
Tammy, you want to come next? Come on. You've got the baby. We all wish you do.
Thank you. I'll come on that side.
You got it?
Easier for me to get through.
Here you go. Let me get out of your way. Do you want me to hold the baby while you do this?
You wanna
I
hold the
will.
They're angry. Here, that would be great. Let me just.
Okay. Here we go.
All right. Here, you hold the baby.
Okay. You take the mic.
All right.
I'll take the baby. We will back her.
All right. There's her bell.
Oh,
she's got a.
she is so ready for this. Dear.
Well, she's why I'm here. You know, the stakes for the Supreme Court nomination could not be any higher. Whoever replaces Justice Kennedy will play a critical role in the lives of workers, of Americans with pre-existing conditions, of all Americans for generations to come. But today I'm here to talk about women such as myself who use assistive reproductive technology to have children. Women who perhaps struggled with infertility for years or decades, families who tried so hard to have their children, and finally, through the miracle of IVF, were able to have children. If Roe v. Wade were overturned, the protections provided by Roe v. Wade against things like personhood amendments, personhood bills, would actually have disappeared, which means that my fertility doctors would have been committing a crime in helping me to try to start a family. You see, if a fertilized egg is a person, then you have run into all sorts of risks in terms of birth control. IUDs would become illegal. many fertility treatments would become illegal, and I would not be able to have either of my beautiful children that I struggled so hard for over a decade to conceive. We can't confirm just anyone. Who we confirm won't just have decision-making power over whether women like me are able to start and grow their families. It will affect women all across this nation, and we just can't rush this decision. We cannot allow President Trump to pursue his goal, his own words of overturning Roe v. Wade. We need to make sure that the next Supreme Court justice will protect the constitutional rights of all women and allow all the families like mine out there that are seeking to start a family the ability to have precious children like I have with Miley and Abigail. Thank you.
Okay, just stay right there. We're good. We're good. So, I'm here today because of a genuine threat to hundreds of millions of women across this country. A threat to their constitutional right to make decisions about their own bodies, and a threat to their access to the full range of health care that they need to live productive lives and to grow healthy families. Make no mistake about Judge Kavanaugh. He was put on a list that was pre-screened by right-wing extremists. He was pre-certified by a right-wing group that he would overturn Roe versus Wade. In addition, he has his own record so far, and he has made it clear in that record that he has no commitment to preserving health care for women across this country. So, this is a fight. This is the fight of our lives. Trump is not a king. He does not appoint someone to the Supreme Court and then it just happens automatically. It only happens if a majority of the United States Senate go along with it. And that's why this is the moment for people all across this country to raise their voices. This is a moment for women to speak out. This is a moment for friends of women to speak out and to make sure that women are entitled to preserve their constitutional rights to decisions over their own body, preserve their access to health care. It's that simple. We need help in this one. Go ahead.
Hello. My name is Danielle Campoarmor. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I'm an editor, writer, columnist, a mother to a 3-year-old son. I'm currently 21 weeks pregnant, and I'm incredibly privileged to be here. But I am also all of these things because I had an abortion when I was 23 years old, less than a year out of college, in an unhealthy relationship, living paycheck to paycheck, and unable, in every single aspect of the word, to care for another human being. My abortion story is not remarkable. I was living in Washington State, so I wasn't subjected to mandatory waiting periods or unnecessary counseling. My local Planned Parenthood was literally 5 minutes away from my apartment, so I didn't have to drive long distances, pay for lodging, or find childcare. My insurance covered a portion of the procedure, and my then partner and I split the rest. And after 7 or so minutes, thanks to the dedicated, informative staff at Planned Parenthood, I had my life, my body, and my future back. This is how abortion access should look like in a country that claims to be the land of the free. But if Judge Kavanaugh is confirmed to the United States Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade is overturned, women and other people who access abortion, like trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people, would be stripped of the right to control their own bodies. I believe Donald Trump was serious when he made those erroneous, hateful claims about Mexicans and immigrants, and now thousands of children have been forcefully separated from their parents. I believed his serious and erroneous claims about Muslims and Muslim Americans, and now we have the Muslim ban. So I believed him in 2016 when he said he would appoint anti-choice justices to overturn Roe v. Wade automatically. I also believe Mike Pence when he says he wants to overturn Roe v. Wade and promises that we will see this landmark case eviscerated during our lifetimes. And I believe in the actions of Judge Kavanaugh, who attempted to use his judicial power to prevent a young undocumented woman in the United States custody from accessing a safe legal abortion. He would certainly overturn Roe v. Wade if given the chance. And it is we, the people, who stand to lose our right to complete bodily autonomy. It's the poor rural people who need to access care, the people of color, and over half of mothers who end up seeking abortion services. I'm here today from New York because I will not stand by while that happens. I am one of 4 women who have an abortion, and there are millions of us who will fight to make sure that our children have as many rights as we have today. I am one of millions of Planned Parenthood patients and supporters who will march, flood town halls, and the halls of Congress to demand our rights. Because I'm the mom I am today because of the abortion that I had when I was 23. I'm able to look at my son and my body willing, my future son, and tell him that he was chosen freely and with love. I have my career, my home, my healthy relationship with the father of my child and future child because I was able to control my reproductive life. This was my decision and should not be the business of Judge Kavanaugh to insert himself in the most personal of decisions. Every person in the United States deserves to say the same, which is why I am calling on the Senate to reject the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh. If you fail us, this country won't be the land of the free anymore. And with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Bailey Cannon.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Bailey Cannon, and I'm an OBGYN serving the women and families of the great state of Maryland. And I'm also a fellow with the Physicians for Reproductive Health. I am so grateful to be here today alongside Senators Murray, Warren, Duckworth, and Smith, and Danielle too, to demand the protection of Roe versus Wade. President Trump promised that any of his Supreme Court nominees would oppose Roe versus Wade. The nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the vacant Supreme Court seat does more than just threaten the law. It threatens the health and dignity of my patients. Kavanaugh's nomination is yet another of the ongoing attempts by the current administration to increase barriers to reproductive health care, including abortion, contraception, and maternity care. This is not guesswork. We know the facts. Judge Kavanaugh has already proven his opposition to reproductive rights. He has ruled in favor of blocking a young immigrant woman from being able to access her abortion care. He has argued that employers should be able to deny their employees access to contraception. He believes the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional. Judge Kavanaugh's beliefs will threaten those who already face the most restrictions to accessing safe, legal health care: women of color, immigrant women, low-income women, and LGBTQ folks. Beyond these communities, we're already seeing at state level what a post-Roe environment could look like. Just yesterday in my office in Maryland, I met with a patient who I'll call Julie. Julie came to me to get a birth control implant that'll last her for 4 years. She told me that while she was grateful to live in a state with comprehensive coverage, she was scared of the unknown because of the ongoing attacks on healthcare from the federal government. While I'm lucky to live in a state where my patients have access to care, it's not the reality across this great nation. I have a friend and colleague who practices comprehensive reproductive health care in Arkansas, and because of unnecessary legal restrictions passed by their state's legislature, my colleague has had to turn away women who are in need of abortion care every day. We cannot let this anti-abortion, anti-woman, anti-healthcare judge take a seat on our highest court. The health and well-being of my patients depend upon it. When we empower women with the ability to make their own reproductive health care decisions, we empower communities. We must not just fight this threat to Roe versus Wade, but also to fight for the fundamental rights of all of our family, friends, and colleagues across this country who are threatened. I urge senators to reject the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh. As a physician, as a citizen, and as a woman, I cannot remain silent. Please join me in voicing why Judge Kavanaugh is unfit to serve as our Supreme Court Justice. Thank you.
Thank you all. We're happy to answer questions. There you go. All right. Yes.
Senator, this vote is likely to take place a few weeks before the midterm elections, shortly before. Can you speak a little bit about what influence do you think this particular vote will have on the elections, particularly when it comes to female voters?
I think we already know in this election cycle that women are out They know how important their voice is. We have seen it since day one with the Women's March the day after the inauguration. We have seen it in the healthcare debate that occurred. We've seen it on the streets. We've seen it in the number of women running. And women today feel like they really, their rights are at stake in this coming election. They are motivated now.
Do you fear that talking about Roe so much will impact or hurt the Democrats that are in conservative states, those states that have pro-life laws, for example?
What we know is that overwhelmingly, people in this country do not want to see Roe v. Wade overturned. And we are out to make sure people understand that with Judge Kavanaugh on the bench, 5 men will then most likely vote to overturn Roe v. Wade and have unending consequences for women and their choices. And that's the case we're making.
What do you say to those who say Roe was decided by 7 men?
I say that 5 men can overturn it, and I don't want to see that day come.
Is there a specific strategy on the part of Senate Democrats in terms of trying to get a Republican senator to change hearts?
What our strategy is right now is real, and that is for American people in every state in this country to understand what is at risk with the appointment of Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, whether it's the overturning of the Affordable Care Act, which means that you, no matter where you are in this country, won't have coverage or have tough access if you have a pre-existing condition, to overturning Roe v. Wade, to, as we have mentioned before, protection of our clean air and water, and more. And have them make their voices heard to their senator wherever they live. That's what our strategy is.
But strictly speaking on the math, when it comes to the votes, is there a way for the Democrats to, at this moment?
This is really in the hands of voters in individual states across the country. That's exactly what happened when the Affordable Care Act came up a year and a half ago. President Trump said that his first action in Congress would be to overturn the Affordable Care Act. It didn't happen. It didn't happen because people in states across the country, every single state, stood up and let their legislator know how important this was, what it meant to them, their personal stories. And that's what we expect to see over the next several months with this appointment. Yeah. I have not spoken to them. Their constituents are talking to them, and that's what counts. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.